I'll tell you, we just came off our research last week, so this is absolutely the most hastily written talk of my year. But I'll tell you what, that's a wonderful thing, because what I'm going to be talking about is really all of the newest things that we have seen in our external research. And so I just want to say, this really is a special presentation for me. I love being here at Ideation Fresh. I want to thank Ellen so much for inviting me back. And with that, let's move along. There we are. Jim already teed it up. The inspiration for this talk, same thing as last year, is what I'm calling the produce monger's dilemma. And that is, how do you move more produce? Well, of course, this is a food service forum. I certainly can't speak on the retail side. I do not know how to get people to buy less hamburger helper and more salad greens. But I am telling you, on the food service side, chefs are nailing it. Chefs are absolutely nailing it. And I'll say right off the bat, you want to sell more produce? I truly believe that the answer is partnering with proteins. Meat and seafood proteins are your greatest friends. And if we're going to move more produce, that really is the way that we do it. And obviously, it's a continuing issue. I mean, here's this is the most recent issue of Produce Business, where they're talking about lifting consumption. Once again, in my opinion, vegetable centricity, which includes the use of meat and seafood proteins, truly is the answer. Very quickly, and I've got about 100 plates that I want to show you in the next 45 minutes, and I don't want to run over, so I'm going to have to make sure that I don't digress too much, which I have a terrible habit of doing. But I do want to talk to you once again about our MO at Gordon Food Service, how we go about doing our research that leads to the conclusions that we bring to you in this presentation. And it's not a very scientific process, but it is an extremely disciplined process. And it really starts with following very closely throughout the entire year what is happening with new restaurant openings in the three major trend-driving cities in order, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Why those three cities? Well, number one, limited time and treasure. I wish I had all the money in the world to travel all over the country all year long and study what's happening with new restaurant openings, but we don't have the ability to do that. So we concentrate on these three largest cities because they are the ones, number one, that the vast majority of chefs, this is where they want to be. Cleveland has a great food scene, but you don't see chefs who are like, oh boy, if I make it in New York, I can get over to Cleveland. It's actually the other way around. And there really are no other cities other than these three, including San Francisco, anywhere else, where you have so many new restaurant openings. And in fact, during the past year, I targeted over 400 new restaurants that we eventually winnowed down to about 130 targets. And the way that we do that, I visit each and every website of these new restaurants in determining, looking at their menus, what their philosophy is, in determining what the restaurants are that we're going to target and visit. And then, of course, in the month of November, we spend the entire month actually going into December visiting these cities. So if you look at the dates on the screen, we started on Halloween in Chicago and went through. And I'll tell you, these literally, and I'm not complaining because it's part of the job, but these are 100-hour weeks, folks. We take this very seriously. We do our documentation. We go back to the hotel and we crash for a few hours. Then we get up and we document everything that we saw the prior day. So when we leave that city, we have everything completely documented, and that's very, very important because it helps to kind of solidify it in our minds, and it sets us up for the real work, and that is when we get back and we start to say, what does all of this mean, and turn that into recipe and menu resources for our customers at Gordon Food Service, as well as industry presentations. So if you look at Los Angeles, we got back on from the red eye this Saturday, and once again, when we got back, I already had a little bit of a framework set up for this presentation, but it was at that time that I sat down and started writing this. So for the past 15 years, we've been using this process, street-level, first-hand insight to determine what we feel the majority of the menu opportunities are, and we feel that that is so important because I'll tell you, the vast majority of trend trackers, God bless them, they're developing all of their stuff just sitting at a computer screen, compiling information, and I'll tell you, there is nothing more invaluable than when you actually get into a restaurant, you see the food, you taste it, that's when the light bulbs start to go off. So just a very brief history of where we've been the past few years here at Ideation Fresh. a couple of years ago. I was actually sitting on a panel, but I asked Ellen, I said, listen, I just got all this new stuff. Can I show a few slides regarding vegetable centricity? And actually, 3 years ago, or 2 years ago rather, there really wasn't that much activity with the trend trackers talking about vegetable centricity because it was just starting to bubble up. In fact, we first identified this opportunity 7 or 8 years ago with Travis Lett at Restaurant Jelena in Venice, and he really is the father of vegetable centricity on menus. Then last year I came and I said, hey folks, this is the golden age of produce, and I'm telling you, this continues. The trouble with a lot of trend tracking is that there's this perspective like, okay, we've identified this trend, now we drop it and we go on to the next thing. Vegetable centricity is a macro trend that is going to continue to have profound influence on commercial menus for as far as the eye can see. So that's what we were talking about last year. Started off, once again, talking about Travis Lett at Jelena, and then all of these wonderful chefs that were following and creating Jelena-like sections on their menu. They were abandoning the concept or the idea of a category of side dishes, where the produce is really just kind of, like relegated to the bottom of the menu as kind of an afterthought. You got to have your broccoli, you got to have your cream spinach or whatever, and actually putting a lot more thought and spirit and creativity into the dishes and bringing it up into the menu as an actual menu category. And then we talked about just some of the implications, moving vegetables to the center of the plate, and how chefs are increasingly treating produce with the same high regard that they formerly were only reserved for meat-based proteins and seafood-based proteins. Once again, this is moving us in a direction where I truly believe, and these chefs, what they're doing is they're abandoning the meatless mindset, where it's an either-or proposition, where you either have vegetables on the plate or you have meat proteins. But once again, it's the very judicious use of meat and seafood proteins. So, I mean, it might be just a little crumble of sausage, shavings of some country ham, a lot of really umami-rich seafood, different fish roes and anchovies are used in a lot of these dishes. So once again, the real key is the fact that vegetables are becoming a category as opposed to just side dishes. That is what's going away on menus. So, where are we headed? Just this past July, Technomic issued their first report on vegetable centricity. One thing that got me, they were really kind of obsessing about the health conscious aspect of this. I really think the growth opportunity is really built around flavor, where people, they taste these vegetable-centric dishes where the umami is kicked up with a little bit of protein, and they start to go gaga over it. So I really believe it's more built around flavor than health, although obviously anything that has beautiful fresh produce on the plate is going to have a natural healthy halo. Then the Culinary Institute, I can proudly say that they asked me to send my insights on vegetable centricity last year, and that actually became part of their new protein flip report. It was page 6, and the thing that I really hammered them on when I sent the information, I said, what I am seeing is the fact that it is no longer an either-or proposition. That really is the key behind vegetable centricity. And now, although I tell our customers, okay, and the sweet spot for consulting to our customers is the independent commercial, mid-scale to casual upscale restaurant, and a lot of those that have become regional chains, because obviously there are not a lot of restaurateurs that are trying to survive with one concept. So I'm telling them that vegetable centricity, vegetables is a menu category. It is not a restaurant concept. However, we're seeing a lot of chefs that are jumping in with both feet and actually building restaurant concepts around it. One of the newest ones that opened this year on Restaurant Row on Randolph Street in Chicago is called Bad Hunter. I love that name because that's a Native American slang for a vegetarian. They're a bad hunter. Once again, strictly vegetable-centric. Dan Kluger here in New York. Now, this restaurant hasn't opened yet, but Loring Place is going to be his vegetable-centric restaurant where he's going to focus on wood grilling. PYT, Joseph Centino, you'll see some slides from PYT. Joseph Centino, a wonderful chef in Los Angeles, has just opened a vegetable-centric restaurant. We're not sure what PYT means. They were saying it's like pretty young turnips or something like that. And then once again, just in the opening article here about the restaurant, they're saying, well, what's happening with PYT is that meat proteins are not going to take center stage, okay? That they're going to, be singing in the chorus. That is quintessential vegetable centricity on the menu. We see the same thing with Dan Barber here at Blue Hill right here in Manhattan, where he's created a new bar menu, and it's all vegetable centric. And he even says, you know, meat proteins are not going to get center stage. We're going to be treating those really as more of a condiment. So more and more chefs are really jumping on this idea that it doesn't have to be either or anymore. And then when we look at some of the menus from the restaurants that we visited in our most recent research, now you really can't see that menu, I don't think, up on the screen, so we'll blow up the very top of it. Right at the top of the menu are vegetables. That is Little V Table, which has units here in New York and also in Chicago. Restaurant Appellation in Chicago, you can see right there at the top of the menu. No longer a category of side dishes, it is a menu of vegetables, a menu category of vegetables. GT Prime, they didn't bring the vegetables to the top of the menu, but give them a break. It's a new steakhouse. But once again, there are no side dishes on this menu. They are vegetables, and they are very carefully and creatively thought out and executed vegetable dishes. Restaurant Giant in Chicago, this was one of our favorites. Now, they have no menu categories. All they list is what they're offering on the menu. But once again, right up at the top, you have 7 unbelievably wonderful vegetable-centric dishes. And other than that, you got 3 appetizer/sharing plates. You got 5 pastas and 2 entrees. Once again, the largest offering at Giant are their vegetable dishes. Restaurant Hearth, which has been open for a long time here in New York. That's one of the exceptions to our restaurants under a year rule. But Marco Canora continues to reinvent his concepts or his vision of healthy dining. And so you can see in his most recent menu that vegetables are front and center right in the middle of the menu. Here's Looking at You. This is a new restaurant in Los Angeles. You know, you can't, just by looking at a menu, get an idea of whether the food is good or great or if it's terrible. The cuisine at Here's Looking at You, if you're out in Los Angeles, it's one of my highest recommendations for a new restaurant. You can see top left, right at the top of the menu, is their vegetable offering. The Cannibal, which started in New York and then opened out in LA. Once again, this is a place where you get meat sweats, but you can see that vegetables, there's no side dishes, it's vegetables right there on the right-hand side of the menu. Restaurant Terracotta, once again, vegetables right at the top of the menu. And then Restaurant Spartina in Los Angeles, well, they're an Italian restaurant, so they're calling the category ortaggio rather than vegetables. But you can see, once again, vegetables are rising, and they are becoming prominent on more and more menus. So, with that, let's have some fun. Once again, we're going to be going through about 100 plate presentations here, but I would actually like to start with this one, folks. Now, there's a heck of a picture to be showing at a produce talk, but the reason that I'm showing that is because if you're a meat lover and you look at this plate, if it's presented to you, there's definitely going to be some kind of a visceral reaction that, you know, oh boy, steak, you know, we're going to be having, you know, some meat here. But I'll tell you what, that steak in and of itself is not really a beautiful thing. I mean, that's not a beautiful plate presentation. They're, you know, they're shingling the meat a little bit. So I want to give you fair warning, seriously, that, and once again, I mean, I'm a consultant. I'm part of the food service industry. I am not directly part of the produce industry, but I'm going to be showing you some plate presentations, and I'm telling you, folks, these things are so beautiful, they almost brought me to tears, and I am not exaggerating. Much more beautiful than any meat-based dish that you can imagine. So let's go ahead and let's look at the latest in veg-centric, and I do want to point out, once again, the next 24 plates that you're going to see, none of them are vegetarian or vegan. All of them have very umami-rich, judicious amounts of meat and seafood protein. This first one from Cafe Marie-Jeanne in Chicago, these are Maitake mushrooms with pine nuts and lardo. So once again, that umami and the richness is kicked up with little thin shavings of Italian cured back fat. Cafe Medi in New York, there's a great example. Take a look at that plate, folks. I mean, is that just drop dead gorgeous or what? These beautiful heirloom carrots that are served simply. They took some Iberico ham and crisped it up in the oven, and that is the kind of umami garnish on top of these absolutely gorgeous carrots. Restaurant Monteverde in Chicago, this is their roasted zucchini with bagna cotta and Calabrian chili and pecorino romano. I'll tell you, we're seeing so many, we're going to talk about it, we're seeing so many dishes where the umami is kicked up with a simple bagna cotta, which is, of course, that Italian vegetable dip made with garlic and anchovy and olive oil. Restaurant Marty in Los Angeles, Chris Tominaga, he's one of my favorite chefs. This is his new restaurant, charred radicchio, and then it's topped with balsamic braised lamb ragu. garnished with some pistachios and breadcrumbs and fennel pollen. Once again, the heart of the dish is vegetables, but it's garnished with that very richly flavored lamb ragu. Ocean Cut restaurant in Chicago. These are their green and yellow beans topped with an XO sauce. And keep in mind, XO sauce is made with scallops and shrimp and pork. So once again, not a vegetarian dish. Animale in Chicago. These are their sauteed Brussels sprouts with bacon, dried apricot, and pickled mustard seeds. The Joy District in Chicago, once again, I mean, take a look at this beautiful presentation with Brussels sprouts. There is no meat dish that is ever going to look that attractive. Crispy Brussels sprout salad with blue cheese fondue and Newski's bacon, topped with a little bit of Calabrian chili. The Rose Cafe in Los Angeles, actually in Venice, these are their crispy Brussels sprouts. This dish, crispy Brussels sprouts has actually become kind of an old chestnut. If you think about it, it actually started here at Momofuku Sambar with David Chang years ago. But I'll tell you what, when people tasted that first crispy Brussels sprout and their head started to spin, you knew something was going on. He garnished his with a little bit of nuoc cham, a little bit of fish sauce, things like that. Here at Rose Cafe, they're serving it in a dashi broth with a poached egg and scallions. Just another great way of taking an existing dish and once again putting that new spin on it. GT Prime. This is another one of those dishes when they presented this. It's like, this is just so unbelievably gorgeous. These are the crispy Brussels sprouts with maple butter and long peppercorn, and then once again topped with thin shavings of Iberico ham. Royster in Chicago. This is Chef Andrew Brochu, but this is also one of the co-owners is Grant Achatz from Alinea. If you have a chance in Chicago, Royster would be one of my top recommendations to try. Their tagline is the restaurant is the kitchen is the restaurant. So there's like no borders between the kitchen and the dining room. Really cool because you can see all the mise en place and the cooking going on. These are their soy-dusted Yukon fries, drizzled with a tofu mayo, but then topped with a generous amount of katsubushi, the bonito flakes, shaved tuna flakes. Kind of a cool dish because if you've ever seen like katsubushi on a hot dish, they stand up and they kind of wiggle around, so it's kind of an animated dish. Restaurant Mahalo, this is a Hawaiian restaurant in Chicago. Sweet corn and Spam, simple enough. I'll tell you what, absolutely delicious. Nice charred corn with those chunks of Spam. Quality Eats, here we get a little bit more indulgent. This is a new, what I call kind of a new American steakhouse here in New York City. Cream spinach hush puppies with a beef au jus butter. How do you think those tasted, folks? Restaurant Giant, once again, this was one of our favorite new openings in Chicago. This is their sweet and sour eggplant with pancetta and cashews. It's kind of a neat sharing dish because they made like these little house-made pita breads. And so the whole idea was you take the sweet and sour eggplant and you put that on a pita bread and make a little sandwich out of it. Now, when we're doing our research, we always take an exterior shot of the restaurant. Generally, I don't take up a lot of space in the presentation showing them, but I wanted to show you the exterior of actually a restaurant that's been open for a lot of years, about 7 years now, but we go back every other year to check out what they're doing, and that is Restaurant Roberta's in Brooklyn. When it first opened, I featured this as our favorite new restaurant after the apocalypse. This is a cinder block building. When they became more popular and they had to expand the size of the building, they actually took shipping containers, cut them up with an acetylene torch and bolted them to the back of the building. I mean, this is about as bohemian as you can get. Our Uber driver was convinced that I gave him the wrong address when we pulled up here. However, when you get inside Roberta's, this is the type of food you get. I mean, look at these unbelievably gorgeous radishes. Once again, this is garnished with a bagna cotta butter. So the chef is taking that bagna cotta, blending it into a butter with a little lemon, sea salt, absolutely drop dead delicious. So once again, keeping in mind that exterior, take a look at this plate. This is one of those dishes that really, I got choked up when they presented this. And what we see here, the chef is taking sweet onion, and he's taking the inner layers so they're small enough that you can actually cut them so they become like a cup. And he poaches these in a white wine-based courbouillon, so it has some nice herbal notes to it. Then he's taking gooseberries, and he's placing those inside the onion cup, and then drizzling these onion cups with an andouille vinaigrette. Andouille, if you're not familiar with it, is a spreadable, spicy Italian salami. Very, very potent, but once again, this is the type of meat component that gives these produce dishes such a tremendous amount of flavor. And so he's taking a little bit of the andouille, making that into a vinaigrette, and drizzling it on there. I mean, once again, I know that I will never see a hunk of meat as beautiful as thee. There's no doubt about it. One last one from Roberta's, and this actually, I lied. This is actually a vegetarian dish, or at least lacto-ovo. Charred autumn greens. The reason I wanted to show this, it's garnished with new potatoes and horseradish, but also béarnaise sauce. I'll tell you, you want to make a dynamite salad, garnish it with some béarnaise sauce. It was just a perfect, and once again, rather indulgent foil to the rest of the salad. Restaurant Sauvage in Brooklyn, look at this beautiful crudité presentation. All of them they're just like sunk in ice, but once again, this is not a meatless dish. The dip that's provided with it is an anchovy and olive tapenade. Now, this next presentation, come on, clicker, there we go. This presentation is rather green. However, the flavors in this dish and the other dishes that we had at Restaurant Destroyer in Los Angeles were absolutely astounding. This is Chef Jordan Kahn, who got his start doing forager cuisine at Restaurant Red Medicine. He's now broken off on his own, and he's doing Restaurant Destroyer, some of the most innovative cuisine that we've seen. And what we have here is baby romaine, and I didn't deconstruct the dish. I just photographed it, and I'm showing it to you as it's presented. But this is garnished underneath with fromage blanc cheese, crispy chicken skin, and then it's topped with a pistachio soil. A lot of chefs, particularly in Los Angeles, are taking different elements and toasting them and grinding them and doing like different dirts and soils. Not sure how I feel about it, but I'll tell you what, it was really actually quite delicious on top of this dish of baby romaine with crispy chicken skin. More quintessential vegetable-centric, this is from Marco Canora at Restaurant Hearth. Braised honey nut squash with watercress and apple, but then this is sitting in a pool of his hearth broth. And of course, he was one of the pioneers of the bone broth trend. And so this hearth broth is a combination of beef, pork, and turkey. And so he's made this very, very rich broth, and that serves as the base for this delicious honey nut squash dish. This also is a vegetarian dish, but I consider it to be veg-centric. This is a salt-baked turnip. The reason I consider it to be veg-centric is because if you think of salt crusting or salt baking, generally it's done with some sort of fish, you know, a salt-baked salmon, salt-baked sea bass. I really feel good about these pictures because the lady just brought this to the table and started cutting it up, and I caught these photographs on the fly. I was pretty happy with them. And so what they're doing here, and once again, this is Joseph Centino at Restaurant PYT, his new vegetable-centric restaurant in Los Angeles. And so what they do is they take the turnip and they wrap it in hoja santa leaves, which is the South American green herb that's sometimes called root beer plant. It has kind of like an herbal root beery kind of flavor to it. So they wrap that in the turnip, they salt bake it, and here it is being served at the table. You can see there, that's the salt crust once the hoja santa has been scraped off of the turnip. And then it's garnished. It basically is sitting on a bed of chopped red walnut and French feta cheese. They place the turnip on the plate and then top it with a sugar snap pea pesto. You know, once again, take a look at that dish. It's just, you know, drop dead beautiful. I mean, I can't tell you. And once again, I mean, I think it's beautiful in the photograph when it's presented in person. I mean, it truly is profound. Now, there's not a whole lot veg-centric about a big hunk of pork belly on a bun. This is the Beacon Tavern in Chicago, but the reason I wanted to show this was when you order one of their sandwiches, you have a choice of either French fries or crudité with green goddess dressing. And so if you order with the French fries, you get a French fry bag full of fries. If you order the crudité, you get that same French fry bag. But look at the beautiful crudité that they serve with this, which makes a wonderful vegetable option. Green goddess has become huge, one of those retro dressings that's wonderfully delicious. And so I wanted to show you that one because I thought that was a really great way of building some produce into an otherwise protein-heavy plate. And then take a look at this wonderful medium rare burger from Momofuku Nishi. What this is actually is the Impossible Burger. Who's heard anything about the Impossible Burger? Anybody? Got to. Come on. We've been talking on. Oh, really? Okay. Basically, there's a company called Impossible Foods, and they are taking and making a plant-based burger that actually bleeds red. There is a protein that is in vegetables as well as meat, then it's not hemoglobin or whatever, but it helps to produce the red color in vegetables. And so you've got this totally vegetarian meat patty that when they grill it, it actually bleeds red. That is a completely vegan sandwich that you see there, folks. So now let's go. We've talked about veg-centric. Now we're going to look at some meatless dishes as well as more vegetable-centric dishes. And let's start off with vegetable sandwiches. Of course, sandwiches are a huge opportunity all the way around. They're the #1 selling item in food service in all day parts and all segments. This one is from High Street on Hudson, right here in Chicago. They call this their forager. Look, this beautiful. King oyster mushrooms, braised kale, apple, Lancaster Swiss cheese, and then really delicious black trumpet mushroom mayonnaise that they put on there. Blue Door Kitchen. From Chef Art Smith in Chicago. This is his farmer's market vegetable sandwiches, a whole variety of different market vegetables that are marinated, and then the sandwich is topped with a hummus spread. Another one at Blue Door Kitchen. This is his apple and brie panino. Once again, I mean, there are all sorts of opportunities we've seen, just like with the gooseberries on the onion cups at Roberta's, all sorts of opportunities to incorporate fruit into these dishes as well as vegetables. This is garnished with honey and winter squash, arugula, and a Dijonnaise dressing. Restaurant Republique. Now, this is probably one of those more indulgent sandwiches. Republique is a new flex casual restaurant in Los Angeles. They are fast casual at lunch, and then they switch to full service at night. So we were there for lunch, and they serve this unbelievable mushroom toast that's layered with ham and eggs and mushrooms and spinach, and then 2 different sauces. It's drizzled with hollandaise and a red wine bordelaise. The bordelaise, of course, being veal-based, so this is a vegetable-centric dish, not vegetarian, but absolutely delicious. On the vegan side, Restaurant Irvin, a wonderful new restaurant in Los Angeles. They do several wonderful vegetable-based sandwiches. This is their sauteed mushroom hoagie with onion, bell pepper, and a spicy squash spread. Now, anytime we shoot a sandwich, what we try to do, we bring knives with us, and we have straight edge, and we also have serrated edge, very high-quality serrated edge knives, and just very vigorously we saw through the sandwich and try to separate it so you can see the outside and the inside. That was the case here. These sandwiches cooperated beautifully, so that is the inside of that sauteed mushroom hoagie. Then we also have a crispy cauliflower sandwich. This was one of our favorites, garnished with golden raisins and a pine nut caper hummus. A lot of things happening with hummus, a little bit of chili thread, and then once again, we sawed that open. Look at that absolutely gorgeous sandwich. I promise you, you eat that and you're not missing any meat at all. And then finally, and here's another one of these. When they presented this to us, this is also Restaurant Irvin in Los Angeles. When they presented this to us, it's just like, once again, we got choked up. Look how just unbelievably beautiful this tartine, this open-faced sandwich, charred eggplant with a pickled cashew cream. Once again, this is vegan. And then garnished with a little bit of pomegranate and shiso leaf. You know, unbelievably beautiful and absolutely delicious. And then here, you know, once again, there's no meat-based sandwich that's going to look that gorgeous. This is from a deli and cheese shop in Brooklyn called Foster Sundry. You know, just a little place, but they're doing these unbelievable sandwiches. This is their grilled cauliflower sandwich with chimichurri onions and manchego cheese. Beautiful to look at and even more delicious. Next category, we're going to talk about a few things that we're calling They're Everywhere. And once again, when we're doing our research, there are things that are not even on the radar, and you know, we'll be presented plate after plate after plate in all these different restaurants, and we start to see a pattern forming to the point where it was, some of them was like, man, you know, this stuff is just coming out of everywhere. So the first one that we say is They're Everywhere are watermelon radishes. Most of the time used as a garnish or as a flavoring ingredient. Restaurant Ima in Chicago, this is their avocado and sweet pea hummus, garnished very nicely with a couple pieces of sliced watermelon radish. Orsa in Winston, this is also one of Joseph Santino's restaurants. This is his tasting restaurant in Los Angeles. This is his Satsuki, and basically that just means like springtime or May. His Satsuki seafood grain bowl has a little bit of sashimi in the middle of the bowl, but you can see those very nice slices of watermelon radish that are helping to create the color. Now, this is from Cafe Henry. This is a new vegetarian restaurant in New York. This is their Gypsy Salad, and I apologize because when I saw the bowl, we're seeing a lot of chefs that are saucing different types of bowls and plates by spreading sauces, making them spreadable and putting them on the inside of the bowl. This was one of these. That spread that you see is a beet tahini. Absolutely delicious in this, what they're calling this gypsy salad with market vegetables and avocado and garbanzo beans. So down at the bottom of the bowl, it actually kind of got cut off. What they did, and I thought this was kind of cool, they took one of those spiral slicers, and they took the watermelon radish on the spiral slicer, so you had like this long accordion thing of watermelon radish. Rouge Tomate here in New York City. This is another one of my highest recommendations. They've been a vegetable-based restaurant. They were on the Upper East Side for a lot of years. They have now reinvented themselves and moved down to Chelsea. This is their pumpkin hummus. And it's garnished with raw and cooked vegetables, but you can see a couple nice slices of watermelon radish there. Once again, I'm just telling you folks, when you're presented with a dish like this, it's just, so absolutely unbelievable. It does. I really consider it to be very moving. Hopefully my clicker will continue moving. Uh-oh. Come on, baby. Don't fail me now. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so let me go back here, make sure we're... Okay, so there was Rouge Tomate. Okay, La Serena, this is Mario Batali's new restaurant right here. This is vegetable salad with an avocado vinaigrette. Once again, very nicely garnished with those watermelon radishes. Back at Restaurant Irvin in Los Angeles, there we are. This was just a simple pickled slaw that they served us on the side. And once again, garnished, tossed right into the slaw was all of this watermelon radish. And then at Restaurant Charcoal, a very interesting restaurant because everything is either wood-fired or there's a piece of equipment called a Jasper oven, which actually uses charcoal, but it's also enclosed so you can grill and smoke at the same time. They do this beautiful salad of collard greens with sweet potatoes and a lemon raisin vinaigrette, and then they top the thing with sharp white cheddar, so it kind of hid everything. But as soon as we dug into the salad, and this is one of those things like, my gosh, they're everywhere. Once again, we've got the watermelon radishes that are poking out, and so we're saying, well, once again, they are absolutely everywhere. Next, they're everywhere is Maitake Mushrooms. We've already seen some Maitake Mushrooms. Once again, for whatever reason, chefs are just absolutely jumping on this wonderful, also called Hen of the Woods. They make a very dramatic plate presentation, and they're absolutely delicious as far as mushrooms go. So this is the Willow Room in Chicago. These are their Maitake Mushrooms with polenta and goat cheese, drizzled with a chili onion vinaigrette and a poached egg. Look at this, Maitake Ragu. This is from restaurant Manuela, which is inside an art museum in the Art District in Los Angeles, but they're doing some very, very serious food. Beautiful Maitake mushroom ragu on top of crispy polenta with some creme fraiche and a fried egg. GT Prime, once again, a new American steakhouse. They're doing Maitake mushrooms, really indulgent. This is basically the Maitake mushrooms are set on top of just like little melted pieces of brioche Savarin cheese. So very, very luxurious creamy French cheese, a mushroom julienne, and then they drizzle it with a little bit of local honey. Orson Winston, Joseph Santino's tasting restaurant. This is a Maitake mushroom toast topped with burrata and Thai basil. Bedford & Company. Here's a nice food porn close-up of some Maitake mushrooms, but you can see just how nicely and crisply grilled they are. This is very simply grilled Maitake mushrooms with garlic and herbs. Restaurant Nick's here in New York City. This is a vegetarian concept. And once again, you can't see it totally. I kind of deconstructed it a little bit because it's covered with toasted breadcrumb, truffled toasted breadcrumbs. But this is basically just a big hunk of whole Maitake mushroom, which they have roasted in the wood oven, and then they garnish it with a little bit of the braised greens and the aforementioned truffled breadcrumbs. Our absolute favorite, and I'm, once again, if you want to add flavor, texture, etc. One of the most effective ways is to deep fry it. This is Restaurant Marty, Chris Tominaga's restaurant in Los Angeles, and it's simply called Maitake Mushroom, where they're taking that whole Maitake and they're putting it in the deep fryer and then frying it until it is just crispy and crunchy. And so this becomes like mushroom-flavored popcorn. You just kind of pick it apart. They served it with malt vinegar, and then underneath was a garlic ricotta cheese. To me, it was the garnishes were not even relevant. Just the Maitake on itself, just picking it apart and eating it was just plenty of wonderful flavor. Next on their everywhere is Sunchokes. And thank goodness we're seeing more and more sunchokes on menus. I think chefs are finding that they truly have a really intriguing, unique flavor, and they're very, very easy to prepare. I mean, it's as easy as just like scrubbing them up and splitting them and oven roasting them if you choose. St. Louis Assembly is one of a new group of restaurants that are doing contemporary takes on the Meat and Three, which is a southern type. It's a restaurant that's very prevalent in the South, where you order some sort of a meat entree and then you get to pick 3 side dishes. And of course, those side dishes might be, collard greens or corn or whatever. Well, St. Louis is in Chicago. They're doing a contemporary take, and so instead of like a potato, you get the option of a brown butter sunchokes. So they're taking the sunchokes, once again, scrubbing them, just lightly roasting them, and tossing them in a brown butter. Absolutely delicious. Quality Eats. These guys love indulgent dishes. These are the ones that were doing the cream spinach hush puppies. This is scalloped sunchokes. So you can imagine, I mean, there's a lot of butter, a lot of cream in there. They're taking the sunchokes and just thinly shaving them, turning them into a wonderfully creamy and indulgent sunchoke-based dish. Restaurant Sauvage in Brooklyn. Here are oven-roasted sunchokes, but as I talked about at Roberta, where they were taking just a little bit of that andouille, that spicy Italian salami spread, and turning it into a vinaigrette, they're doing the same thing here. They're tossing those sunchokes with an andouille vinaigrette, garnishing the dish with just a little bit of fresh mint. Once again, Jordan Kahn back at Destroyer, some of the most innovative cuisine. This is his caramelized sunchoke soup. And don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but in between the layers of sliced sunchokes are slices of banana. If you want to have experience a really great flavor combination, take a sunchoke raw, slice it, and then slice banana and eat the two together. The flavor combination is absolutely uncanny. Just the kind of warm vegetal flavor of the sunchokes with the sweetness of the banana. The flavors absolutely marry perfectly. Chef must have been doing some experimentation and really hit on something great there. So once again, caramelized sunchoke soup with those slices of banana, and then garnished with wild fennel up at the top of the dish. Restaurant Bedford & Company, can't really see this all that clear, but this is their watercress and pickled sunchoke salad with arugula apple, sesame seeds, and then a little shaving of ricotta salata cheese. Restaurant Otto Boy, this is another really innovative restaurant, Korean sharing plates right here in New York. These are their sunchokes that they serve with oyster mushrooms, black truffle, and some supremes of orange. Once again, a great example of taking fruit and incorporating it into a vegetable-centric dish. Now, we were talking about maitakes are everywhere, sunchokes are everywhere. We actually discovered a few dishes where they were serving maitake and sunchokes together. One example, let me see here. Okay, yeah, no, we're good. Restaurant PYT, Joseph Santino's restaurant, sunchoke. I'm sorry, I missed that. This one does not have the maitake mushrooms in it yet. I'm a little ahead of myself. But this is Chef Santino's sunchoke and lima beans, which are actually cooked in the embers, so they're nice and charred, and then garnished with peanuts and green nettles. And another indulgent note, incorporating cremeux de Bourgogne cheese. So there's a really luxurious, creamy melting cheese in the bottom of this dish. Now we get to the dishes where we're actually combining the maitake and the sunchokes. Restaurant Rouge Tomate. This is actually their broccoli dish, but this is garnished with both maitake mushrooms and sunchokes, with a little bit of walnut and a sprinkling of toasted spelt. And then Restaurant Charcoal in Los Angeles. There we are. Oven roasted maitake and sunchokes combined together and tossed with some Cabernet onions. Next category, vegetable treatments. And the first treatment that I want to talk about is bagna cotta. We're seeing all sorts of vegetable-centric dishes that are having the umami kicked up by either being tossed or sauced with that Italian vegetable dip, based basically olive oil, garlic, and anchovy. And I do want to make mention, this photograph is 5 years old, and this is one of the anchor signature dishes at Travis Lett's Gelina in Venice. This is his grilled, it's either radicchio or Treviso. In this case, it's Treviso, wood grilled and brushed with bagna cotta. I am absolutely convinced this was the seed dish. This was the dish that has inspired the use of bagna cotta on all of these dishes that we are seeing today, including this one from Honey's. A new tasting menu restaurant in Chicago, honey roasted Brussels sprouts with bagna cotta and smoked salt. Those didn't really look caramelized enough for me. These, on the other hand, from Cannibal in Los Angeles, very, very nicely caramelized crispy Brussels sprouts, once again tossed in bagna cotta with a little sprinkling of Calabrian chili. Momofuku nishi, right here, the folks that are doing the Impossible Burger, warm beets tossed with bagna cotta and garnished with chervil. This is another one. I mean, look at that plate. I mean, okay, this is fresh radishes. The stems are left on, served with a little bit of bagna cotta in the dish. That's basically it from the Willow Room in Chicago, radishes with bagna cotta. But, once again, just the physical beauty of a plate like that, when they set that down, it's just, once again, absolutely unbelievable in my estimation. Restaurant Manuela in Los Angeles, grilled lettuces brushed with bagna cotta, topped with breadcrumbs. Once again, I mean, all of these dishes, I am sure, are based on that inspiration from Chef Let. Restaurant Kettle Black, a new Italian concept in Los Angeles. This is their cauliflower with bagna cotta, fried capers, pickled raisins, and pine nuts. Next vegetable treatment, well, we blew through that, is hummus. Once again, this is the year of the pulse, but we are seeing so many new hummus dishes that are not based on any sort of bean or grain. Some of them are. Most of them are just very creative twists on hummus using different vegetables. This is a great example from Little Beet Table. This is their cauliflower hummus that's garnished with popcorn and toasted seeds and red onion. They also do a crudité dish. This is another one of those. I mean, look how beautiful that is. I mean, I hope I'm not harping too much on the physical beauty of all these plates, but I mean, look at that crudité, and then garnished with a little dish of roasted red pepper hummus for dipping. Restaurant Nick's here in New York. One thing that we saw, a lot of these hummuses are like very, very finely pureed. I don't know what kind of RoboCoop or whatever they're using to make them absolutely silky smooth. This is a red pepper and walnut hummus from Nick's. And then on the other hand, we saw some different vegetable hummuses that were actually quite coarse, almost chopped from Rose Cafe. This is their pumpkin hummus, which they serve with a beautiful big hunk of house-made naan bread, and then they garnish it with pomegranates and a pepita salsa. Nice chopped pumpkin seeds. Here's a bean-based hummus. This is Forbidden Root, just a really great, this is a microbrewery in Chicago, but they also have a Dynamite Chef, a wonderful restaurant. And this hummus is made with cranberry beans, garnished with dried fig, parsley, sumac, and preserved lemon. And then back at Quality Eats, a celery root hummus. Absolutely delicious. Then they take beets, they roast beets and make what they call a roasted beet tabbouleh that is the garnish for this celery root hummus. Serve it with a little bit of grilled bread, absolutely dynamite. Yet another dish, charred rutabaga hummus from High Street on Hudson right here in New York, served with a hot charmoula and black sesame oil. Yet another one from High Street on Hudson. This is another one of these that are just, this stuff was just pureed so smooth. It was just silky smooth and kind of shiny in the bowl, a roasted vegetable hummus. So there's just a variety of different roasted vegetables pureed into a very flavorful, unique hummus and served with some of their house-made seeded rye bread. And then a really interesting one from Restaurant Beefsteak in Los Angeles. This is their turmeric hummus. So now this is based on garbanzo beans, but they back off on the garlic and the tahini, and they flavor this very heavily with fresh turmeric. And I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I even see big bins of fresh turmeric in grocery stores today. I think that's because a lot of people are using them in making juices, but it works very wonderfully here in this hummus. Makes it very, very bright yellow. If you taste turmeric when it's dried, it really has no flavor, but fresh turmeric definitely has its own very distinct flavor. So here they're serving it as a hummus with some sweet potato chips, but then they also did a salad where the turmeric hummus was used as the salad dressing, tossed with some baby kale and some local carrots. And I'm telling you, this turmeric hummus made just an absolutely wonderful dressing for this salad. So this was after we had served it. I wanted to make sure there was some of that hummus on the spoon so you could see how that was tossed with this baby kale salad. And with that, I want to bring up another category, and I am calling it Kale Here to Stay. Why do I say kale is here to stay? Because the other pundits are saying that it's going away. And I'll tell you what, I'm nothing wrong with Baum and Whiteman, but I'm telling you, these people are drawing their trend conclusions by looking at a computer screen. They are not getting into the restaurants and actually experiencing this stuff. I'm sorry, I know this for a fact. And so what are they saying? Number 6 trend for 2017 is Hail Kale and Farewell. Another problem with the trend trackers, you know, something always has to be going away. If I had a nickel for every report I read that said that the sharing plates trend was about to come to an end, I'd be sipping palm wine in Tahiti today. And then what do they say here at the bottom? It looks like dreaded kale has reached its peak. What the hell is that? Dreaded kale. I'm not even a member of the produce industry, and I'm offended by that. But I'll tell you what, they are completely wrong. And you know how I know? Because we go to all these new restaurants, open less than a year, and here are the dishes that the chefs are serving. Let me get to my notes here so I know what the heck I'm talking about. Sorry, once again, I digress. El Shebar. This is one of John Mannion's new restaurants in Chicago. Creamed kale with Gruyere bechamel, cornmeal fried onions, and shaved Parmesan. Yet another prominent Chicago chef, Rick Bayless. This is his new concept, Linea Brava. If kale's going away, why is he using it? Grilled and roasted kale and poblano peppers tossed with caramelized onions and fresh corn. Restaurant by Chloe. This is a wonderful vegan concept here in New York. Kale artichoke dip with almond parmesan and tortilla chips. Here we are back at Destroyer, okay, Jordan Kahn. If kale is going away, what's he doing this dish for? The presentation's kind of green, but once again, this was so delicious. And so this is his kale salad with marinated beets, pumpkin seed butter, and spelt. Of course, those items you can't see underneath all of that wonderful kale. The Loyalist in Chicago, black kale with thin slices of raw matsutake mushrooms and Honeycrisp apple. Another example of having that fruit in there. Restaurant Fig in Los Angeles. Look at this, kale tabbouleh with parsley, bulgur, green onions, and Castrovetrano olives. Absolutely gorgeous and wonderfully delicious. Restaurant Steadfast in Chicago, wood-grilled kale salad with a bacon vinaigrette. Once again, just that judicious use of meat proteins, smoked goat cheese, pomegranate, and compressed turnip. And then this dish from Leona in Los Angeles, these are their Dutch fries, and then they're flavored with what they call a kale salt. So they're crisply frying kale, tossing it with some sea salt and crunching that up, and then they toss the French fries in there. Absolutely delicious, totally delicious. And then our most underappreciated, and once again, don't forget about the fruit. The one item that we're seeing that we consider still most underappreciated, but it is starting to grow on menus, is the persimmon. Now, this presentation is actually the one, this is from last year's research. However, this was one of the first great persimmon dishes that we saw from Chef Claire Well at Tilda All Day. This restaurant actually closed. She had a big argument with the manager, so they closed it down. Totally irrelevant to this particular tartine, where she takes fresh, ripe persimmon. I think the one thing maybe that turns a lot of people off is they'll buy an unripe persimmon, which is so sour and astringent, and it chases them off. But persimmon, when it's ripe, is just so wonderful. And so here she's taking some black bread, slices of persimmon, and then she takes lardo, once again, that Italian cured back fat in little pieces, and she just chars it in a pan, and then takes that charred lardo along with the fat and just pours it right on top of the persimmon toast. Unbelievably delicious. Restaurant PYT, this is Joseph Centino once again. This is his persimmon with red crunch grapes, butter lettuce, black butt cheese, which is a wonderful cheese from Australia, and a walnut vinaigrette. This next one, you really can't see the persimmons all that well, but this is their prawn and persimmon salad from Republique on their lunch menu with cabbage, arugula, red onion, peanuts, and a chili lime dressing. And then Salt's Cure, also in Los Angeles. This is one of those new American steakhouses. Now, this is a pork confit niçoise salad, but look how beautiful all the Treviso and all of the different greens are. They garnish this with some olives and potato salad and deviled egg, but once again, right in the middle of the plate, they're garnishing that with a dice of ripe persimmon. Absolutely delicious. Restaurant Leona does a shaved persimmon salad, garnished with California burrata, toasted squash. This was one of those root to stem things. They said, you know, we're not using pumpkin seeds. We got butternut squash. We're toasting those seeds, and we're using those as our pepitas. So they're toasting butternut squash and using those. A little bit of their proprietary chili spice that they put on there, and a little drizzle of saba. Just an absolutely dynamite dish. Persimmons are definitely underused on menus, but I think that we might be turning the corner and seeing some more of those. So I know I've run over for a couple minutes, and I really apologize about that, folks. Trying to cover all this as best I can. Now I want to close with just our two favorite dishes. And I hope you don't perceive what I've been saying as overly dramatic, because I mean, I'm really speaking from my heart. The beauty of so many of these dishes, and then the flavors. My God, the flavors. This was one of our two favorites. From a restaurant, Here's Looking at You in Los Angeles. This is their Momotaro Tomato. So this is a Japanese hybrid, very sweet tomato. And then it's flavored, once again, they're using banya cotta, And then they're also taking Chinese lapchang sausage. The very, very typical Chinese sausage, and they're chopping it and toasting it and then putting that on the tomato. Now, it's garnished with a little bit of creme fraiche and fine herbs, but I'll tell you, it was like that magic combination of the tomatoes, the banya cotta, and this lapchang sausage. The flavor combination was just absolutely unbelievable. One of our 2 favorite dishes. Our number 1 favorite dish, this one turned our heads. This is also from Jordan Kahn at Destroyer in Los Angeles. What genius. This is an avocado confit. So confit by definition, what do you think, Peggy? Confit by definition is where you're taking meat and you're cooking it in animal fat to make it tender. Duck confit, confiting the leg and thigh is the most typical application. And so what Chef Khan is doing here, he takes olive oil and avocado oil, and then he flavors it with a variety of different allium, some garlic and shallots and onion, and then he cooks this avocado in this oil to where, and of course avocado is pretty delicate and unctuous to begin with. It makes it even more just absolutely spoon tender. Now the photograph there, I mean, you can't really tell if that's an avocado or a hedgehog. It's basically the topping. Once again, he likes to do the dirt type thing. It's fried teff. The grain that they use in Ethiopia for making their injera bread, fried teff, and then burnt onion powder. So once again, since you can't really see exactly what that is, we cut into it for the next plate. And here, once again, you have this avocado flavored with all of these allium and the beautiful oil. Now it melts in your mouth on top of the toast. The most astounding dish that we tasted in our most recent research. So just in closing, industry opportunities. You're not going to hear anything new from me here, folks, but I want to reiterate. Produce in food service now, you're in the cool school, okay? We are no longer the support act. And side dishes are done. Vegetables are now a category on the menu. So, I mean, we need to, and seriously, I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, man. We need to promote it. We need to advocate it. But most importantly, realize that if we're going to continue to sell more produce in food service, proteins are your partners. They are your most valuable asset. So taking the produce and combining it judiciously with high flavor proteins are absolutely the opportunity. And I'll tell you what, you can rest assured, folks, consumers are ready. A big old fat baby boomer like myself. I mean, I'm just so in love with all these vegetable-centric dishes. How do you think the millennials and the Gen Z are going to feel about this as the trend continues to progress? This is where it's at, folks, and I'll tell you, this is a beautiful place to be. We are in the golden age of produce. So that's my presentation. Sorry, I ran a little bit long. Thank you so much, folks. It is so great to be here. Thank you.